We spent over $40,000 promoting a webinar. What worked surprised us, what failed cost us big. Is everything that we learned, everything we do differently next time, and one change that would have saved us thousands of dollars. What's going on out, gang? It's your boy Jerry the Opposite coming back at you with a brand new video. Ooh. And today we're going to be looking at a case study where we spent $40,000 promoting and scaling an educational webinar. And let me tell you, from past experience, some things worked and some things totally tanked. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down exactly what scaled, what flopped, and the dumb mistake that almost wiped our best performing campaign off the map. If you're running webinar, don't miss this, guys. We're going to get into it today. So guys, by the end of today, you will learn what audience types actually scaled us past 5K a day, why webinar attendance, not registration, is the bottleneck. 1, what audience types actually worked and allowed us to scale past 5K a day. 2, why webinar attendance is the real bottleneck and not registration. 3, the creative format that beat all of our other creative. And 4, how operational glitches cost us thousands and how you can avoid them. So guys, grab your coffees and grab your hats. Time to spin up some ad magic. Okay guys, so I'm going to go through the top tips, learnings and tricks. There's actually 12 learnings that I want to present to you that you might find interesting if you are running webinars and you want to learn from our mistakes and our learnings. I'm going to go through the top 12 tips for you so that you know what to do, what to avoid, and what to look out for your meta ads promoting a webinar. First of all, audiences. Number 1, lookalike audiences did really well. So now learning number 1, guys, is that lookalike audiences worked really, really well. Now, in order to better lookalike, okay, so you have to actually run the webinar once, and then when you have the list of those people that attended, okay, this is really high intent audiences, not just people who signed up, but the people who attended the webinar. We're going to create a lookalike audience of those, and then the second time we promote a webinar, we can use that lookalike audience and push to people who are similar to people who already attended, right? So guys, learning number 1 is if you have the ability to run a webinar first, get people there, and then create a lookalike audience. This is an audience that worked really well for us. Create a lookalike audience of webinar attendees, and then target the new webinar to that lookalike audience. Okay, so that's tip number 1, guys. If you have run the webinar, okay, make sure that you import the list of people who attended the webinar, and then create lookalike audience for each of the webinars that you're running. Okay, you can group them together in a new ad set when you're looking to promote your new webinar, but make sure that you utilize a lookalike audience of people who have attended previous webinars. Okay, this is learning number 1, guys, from our webinar case study. Okay guys, point number 2, okay, really highly recommend doing this. So if you know Mr. Barry's methodology of ugly ads, okay, can work really well for you. And that's exactly what we tried here. We tried a multimedia asset group to promote this particular webinar, including animation, video ads, static image ads, UGC, and other testimonial based content, okay? And guys, guess what? The creative that worked best for us was raw UGC, filmed direct to camera, talking about utilizing emotional messaging around the pain points that each user may be feeling in order for why they need to come and join and learn in the webinar. This, guys, worked really well for us. It outperformed static images where we're using simple hooks, animation videos, glossy animation videos, where again, we're utilizing those same hooks, having a relatable UGC person talking to camera about what they're going to be learning in the webinar and how they're excited. Using emotional messaging was a key piece of content for us, guys. This was the content that outperformed lots of other content. Okay, guys, so make sure that you're using not only just UGC. I think for Meta themselves, they highly recommend using multimedia asset groups whereby you're using images, you're using UGC, you're using animation videos, all those pillars into one campaign. But the thing that had the biggest resonation for us, guys, was emotional based hooks. Okay, emotional, tapping into that customer persona and drawing in on emotional messaging and hooks. So these were the 10x things that did really well for us. Those were the ads that performed really well. So as learnings, guys, highly recommend trying UGC, user generated content, as using emotional hooks and pain points that your customer persona can identify with. Okay, so that's point number 2, guys, for maximizing your webinar impact. Now, guys, my tip number 3, if you have a big budget, if you're spending a lot every single day, you will really need to pay attention and monitor the ads and how the ads are performing. Typically, with higher budgets, obviously, there is something called ad fatigue. The more an ad is shown to a specific audience or the more ad is seen, the more ad fatigue can set in, aka your results will start to go down the more you use that ad. Okay, so with a larger budget, obviously you're saturating the audience with that ad more. So when you spend more, you need to be really on the ball, lots of creatives ready to go, so you can switch out those underperforming creatives, you can keep testing new creatives. If you're spending a lot, creative iteration and creative testing is really important, okay? So learning number 3, guys, is when you are scaling the budget, sometimes the CPA can rise. Make sure that it stays within that acceptable range, okay? As you're increasing the budget, make sure that you're swapping out ads to get to that acceptable range within the CPA. And the thing thing that can stop your CPA from going crazy when you scale your budget is continuous creative testing, optimization, and swapping out those underperforming ads for testing out new ads to see if we can get better results. So it's really important, guys, that we keep switching out those ad creatives. Typically, you might see as you scale the budget, the CPA does increase. Make sure that it's still within your acceptable range of what you think is tolerable, and make sure that any ads that are over your acceptable CPA range, make sure you disable those and swap them out for new fresh creatives to see if you can get even better CPAs. That's my tip number 3, guys. Make sure that you always have, if you're spending a lot of money, always have creatives ready to go and test things to disable those underperformers and keep doubling down on the things that are working. Okay. Now, tip number 4, guys, okay, this is massive, absolutely huge. The journey doesn't end when somebody signs up for a webinar, right? When somebody signs up for a webinar, they submit their lead detail. Then it's very important that we nurture that lead, okay, in the lead up to the webinar. Because, that's my point number 4 here, attendance rate was the main funnel weakness and not the ads themselves, okay? So we were bringing in great results with our ads, very nice CPAs, which was amazing. But, guys, the main thing that made these campaigns fail is that the company that we were working with didn't utilize the tips and tricks that we would recommend in its totality to get very high attendance rates, okay? We have a whole methodology of how to get 95% attendance rates, but it is very resource heavy, very time intensive and costly, but you'll get, if you're interested in making sure not only that people are signing up, but people are turning up, okay? There is a whole system and flow that we need to utilize in order to get people to show up, make sure they attend the webinar for the whole duration, that they're fully engaged, that they're resonating really nicely, okay? So getting people to sign up is only half the story, guys. We need to get people to attend. Now, what do? Well, like I mentioned, we have a whole strategy, a whole system whereby we can ensure that we get at least 95% attendance rates on our webinar. Now, the company that we're working with here didn't do that. So one of the biggest lessons that we could see, and this is from all the other testing that we've done around this, because we have tested this extensively across many different clients, across many different industries. If you utilize the system which we are suggesting, you will get very high attendance rates. The company didn't want to do that here. And the data that we're able to get through this test is another validation to that. Attendant, the webinar always goes off very well. In this case, they didn't want to do that, and the webinar didn't do too well. Okay, so guys, what is the attendance rate that we're looking at on here? Like I said before, if you utilize all the different steps that we would suggest, you'd normally get around 85 to 95% attendance rates. On average, the attendance rate here, because they didn't do any of those things, was 27%. So 27% of the people that we had sign up attended the webinar. This isn't that great, guys. This is quite poor. Okay, so what I'd recommend is putting a lot of time and resources to the team into the nurturing aspect. So much about a lot of people signing up, but those people that do sign up, you want them to attend. So what do? We have a whole nurturing sequence, guys, right? We need to have reminders. We need to have personalized messaging. We need to have gifts. There's many tips and tricks that we utilize in order to get a high attendance rate. Guys, I'm going to link the card up below if you want to learn more about the intricacies about how we get people to attend. But with our ads, obviously we're getting people to sign up, and then it's down to the sales team to go and nurture those leads, to ensure you're creating touch points, ensure that they know that you care about them so that they do attend your webinar, okay? Because the more effort you put into nurturing those leads, the higher your attendance rate will be. And like I said, we have a whole structure for this, and this wasn't utilized. Therefore, in these tests, we had around 20 to 30% attendance rate, which is pretty poor, guys, okay? So it really speaks testament to our system, because when we have done that system in the past, we're getting, like I said, across many different clients and different industries, we're always getting very high attendance rates. So we need to utilize that. Like I said, click the card in the top corner if you want to know how to do that. And to that point, guys, one of the things that we did utilize within the nurturing of the leads that came in for this webinar was to create a reminder system, right? So anybody who signs up, they get reminders, SMS reminders and email reminders, that webinar when it's taking place, so that we can remind those people and say, hey, don't forget the webinar. It's happening in 24 hours. Don't forget the webinar. It's happening in an hour. Tune into the webinar. It's happening in 10 minutes. So we have incremental reminders. This is part of that nurturing flow. And guys, when the reminder system went down for one of the webinars, this really impacted the attendance rate, really showed and proved to us in data how important things like SMS and email reminders are to remind those people that are registered to actually attend. So in this case, one of the webinars had a broken SMS flow, which essentially caused a major drop of attendance. I think at that time we saw like 10% attendance or something like that. It only means, guys, that pre-webinar communication, if it's SMS or emails, is absolutely vital. Get people to show up to your webinar. So at a minimum, I suggest having this. It's not the thing that does move the needle. Like I said, click the card in the top corner if you want to know about webinars and how to get people, how to get high attendance rates. But this as a baseline is what I'd recommend. You might have an attendance rate of 10%. If you don't have these, you might see that go up to, 30% or so when you have the reminders in there to remind the attendees that the webinar is taking place. Now, my next point, I kind of did hint at already within point 3, for example. Point number 3 was obviously talking about as you scale the budget, the CPA can rise, and what we need to do in order to minimize is to switch in new creative, because creative fatigue can really set in quite quickly at a higher spend, right? So again, this is another point, guys. Even winning creatives, they can lose momentum after a few days of really high spend. If you're spending anywhere from 10K plus a day, you're going to have to really be very vigilant and swapping in and out new creatives and disabling those underperformers to maintain the performance of the overall campaign. And like I said, the creative that did work best for us was the UGC, talking about emotional hooks direct to camera and getting people to sign up that way. Okay, guys, learning number 7. Okay, and some of you may know this, some of you may not, for example, but it's very important to analyze and be vigilant of the day in which the test launches. Okay, this comes from our experience at Meta themselves. Okay, you should never launch a test on Friday. The best time to start a campaign or to launch a campaign is either Monday or Tuesday. If you are launching a campaign, if you are testing, the launch timing can really affect the performance, okay? The performance won't be as steady over the weekend as it will be during the weekday. So if you want to do a match-for-match A/B test across these different campaigns, if you start on Monday on one test, on the second test, the third test, and all the other tests, okay? Because particularly, do not start your campaign test at the weekend, guys. It's not a good idea. It's really not a good idea. The data can be skewed. You won't get as accurate results as if you set all of the campaigns up to start on the same day. And ultimately, there's different usability and behavioral habits of users during the weekend than during the weekday. So to get maximum effect here, what I'd recommend is establishing what day you want to launch all your campaigns and then ensuring that all the campaigns start on that day and that you don't start campaigns over the weekend. Okay, guys, my next point number 8 is, this isn't essential, but it really helped us in order to see what was working, is that typically we group creatives either by theme or by creative type. So within this case, what we did is that we put all of the UGC in one ad set, we put all of the animation videos in another ad set, and then we put all the static images in another ad set. This allowed us to fine tweak and see the data around each creative type. And like I said, we can also do this by theme. If, for example, there are certain pain points where there's multiple creatives around that pain point, maybe you want to separate the creatives into each ad set based on the pain point. But what we did here, we created separate ad sets for each creative type so that we could say, look, the CPA for image ads is this, the CPA for UGC ads is this, etc. It's very much dependent on you and how you like to organize things. That's how we organize things typically, and that's how we did within this campaign. For us, it ensures more cleaner testing and allow us to fine tune the budget on some of those things and just have a more vigorous, let's say, budget control over, the things that are working, etc. So that's what we did there. Okay, guys, my tip number 9 is that landing pages. Super important to have really good, nice landing pages and to keep testing this as well. As people are clicking on your ad, they're getting driven to a page whereby they are submitting their lead details. So it's also good to test and optimize the landing page. Look at the conversion rate of the people that learn on that page and the people that sign up and make tweaks in order to optimize the conversion rate of somebody taking action on that page. So you make fine tweaks, measure the conversion rate, see which differences are actually affecting that conversion rate and fine tweak it. So for point number 9, the big learning here, guys, was actually drove a higher conversion rate. So the less polished landing page had about a 23% conversion rate, and the more polished landing pages, the one that we spent more time on, actually only got 17% conversion rate, right? So my tip to you guys is test different landing pages, test different styles of landing page, because you could find that a simpler landing page that maybe loads a bit quicker converts higher than a more complicated landing page that has a lot of information and it takes a bit longer to load. Okay, so that's my tip number 9, guys. For us, a landing page that was super simple and super clean was the best performer in terms of conversion. But before you go anywhere else and you're new here, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss any more important updates. We are here many times a week to help business owners, online advertisers, and digital marketeers get the best from their online advertising, paid media, and digital marketing strategies. But without further ado, let's get on with the video. So I'm going to show you the landing page that works really, really well for us. This is the landing page where people were signing up for our free webinar. Really, really simple. We have here the people that will be hosting it, the availability to select the date. There's actually another tip, guys. As part of your creative, never specify what in the creative itself the date of the webinar, right? Because if webinar is an ongoing strategy for you, you want to drive people to the landing page and then people can select the date themselves, okay? Don't specify in the ad creative because you'll need to keep swapping out new creatives every time there's a new webinar, right? So you want the same creative saying about webinar, and then when people get to the landing page, that's when they select the date and time that is actually best for them, right? So if you're running multiple webinars, that is what I'd recommend. Don't keep changing and swapping out your creatives with the dates on them. Allow your creators to properly optimize and get people to go to the landing page and select the dates themselves. So that's the first part of this, guys, is selecting the date that they want to sign up to the webinar, and then they just enter their first name, last name, email, and telephone number, and then they press sign up for the webinar. Obviously, there's some scarcity here. It's quite simple, guys, right? And this was one of the ones that worked really, really well for us. So, guys, I recommend creating a really simple landing page where the load time is really quick, where they're entering their name, their email, and their phone number. Okay, and then after that, they go into the nurturing flow, right? So our ads are driving people to this landing page, and this was the one that worked really well for us. Now, my next point, guys, is granular audience segments underperformed without tailored creative. What do I mean by that? Well, as part of our audience targeting and some of the tests we ran, one of the audience targeting that we wanted to test was grandparents. Okay, now when we niched our interest targeting in our audience and grandparents interest-based audience, make sure that this audience has its own custom messaging and relative creative assets talking to that persona. Okay, so if you're targeting grandparents, make sure that you're not just feeding them generic ads, that you create creative talking to that persona. Okay, hey grandparents, this is why you need this. Hey grandparents, right? Speak to the people in the creative. So if you have, for example, a parent's audience, make sure that you're speaking to parents in that audience. Okay, kind of obvious, but sometimes we don't see that, right? They use the same creatives and the same messaging for all of these different audience segments, even though every single audience segment is going to resonate differently. They're going to have different messaging that's going to resonate with them. So really, really important, guys, to remember that. Within this example, we had a grandparents audience, and then we ran more generic creative to them. It didn't perform as well as when we made creative for that audience that highly spoke to them. Okay, kind of a bit obvious, but guys, really important that if you are targeting a certain audience, that your creative speaks to that audience and you're not just creating some generic ads that don't particularly resonate. Okay, so that is my tip number 10, guys. And tip number 11, guys, is make sure that you're tracking the data across each individual webinar. So whether that's in a tracking spreadsheet or a data tracking spreadsheet, make sure that you're logging your learnings, what's happened across each webinar, what's changed, so that you can always refer back and always see, hey, when we did this webinar, we had this attendance rate with these conversion rates. Here were the things that attributed to that. When we did this webinar, doing these things that attributed it, we got these results, etc. Right? So you want to be able to compare all of the different data. Okay. So guys, to show you what some of these webinar ad tracking spreadsheets can look like, okay, it's really, really important that we monitor and keep track of our different webinars. Here's an example of a webinar tracking spreadsheet, and then here's another example of a campaign tracking sheet where we are keeping track of all of the results of every single campaign test that we are trying. Okay guys, these are two examples of how you can lay out a webinar tracking spreadsheet to keep track of everything that you're doing, all your learnings, and so that you can always refer back to the things that were working. Okay, so hopefully now you have a good understanding as to how to lay out a webinar tracking spreadsheet. Tip number 12 is to make sure that the data that you're looking at isn't just orientated around acquisition of somebody signing up to the webinar. Okay, you want to look at the whole conversion rate across each individual touch point, okay, across each individual section that a user will go through. And I'll give you some examples, guys, okay? So, say for example, and I'm using some data here, say for example that you're running a webinar and you're really focused on CPA, which is great, you're getting really good CPA. Within this example, it's $9.37, the target is $10. Okay, great, we're getting really good CPAs, right? The attendance rate is poor. 20% attendance rate, right? So out of the 1,000+ signups that we're getting, we're only getting 200 attendees, which is really poor, right? Which means that the overall conversion rate is only 6.76 in regards to these numbers. And then, which means that only 6.76% of attendees converted and signed up, which meant that we could calculate our true CPA, okay? So within this example, we had 14 signups. We had 1,000 people register for the webinar. We had 207 people turn up, and we had 14 people sign up for our service. Okay, which means that we can calculate the true CPA to somebody actually signing up. On the surface of it, guys, this number was really good. Under $10 to get somebody to sign up within that target range. But the true CPA of somebody actually signing up to the product or service is way higher. The target for this is about $350 for a true CPA for somebody to sign up, because they're going to be spending about $500 when they do sign up. Now, let's compare this to another scenario, okay, where we're not focused on the CPA for somebody to sign up to the webinar, where we're focusing on the conversion rate itself. This CPA number to me, it can go up and down. But here's the thing, guys. If we focus on the conversion rate, the CPA for somebody to sign up to the webinar doesn't move the needle as much as if you did work on the nurturing aspect to ensure that the conversion rate is higher. What I mean by that is it's really hard once you've established the CPA to reduce it, particularly by around 50%, right? So if we want to do half the CPA in the ads, that's really difficult, okay? If we wanted to get half the CPA that we're currently getting, where it takes a lot of resources in the ad manager to get that CPA down. What I would recommend is not worrying about the CPA, working on the conversion rate of the people that are going to attend. So instead of saying, hey, we need double the amount of people at half the CPA, I'd say, it doesn't matter about the CPA, double the attendance rate. Work on when they do get to the webinar that they're converting on the webinar. I'll give you an example here, guys. And this is what happened with us one of the times, right? We ended up paying more for somebody to sign up to the webinar, $12, okay, when our target was 10. But what we did was we did work on the attendance rates. Okay, we're paying slightly more for somebody to sign up to the webinar. We've increased the attendance rate by 10%, which is a lot easier to do than to half the CPA within an ad, okay? To increase and move the needle attendance rate from 20% to 30% to 40% is so much easier than saying, okay, here's a CPA, let's half that CPA in the ads manager. It's a lot easier to work on these incremental things in the nurturing system than it is for us to try and get a reduced CPA. So that's really important to remember, guys. Here, within this example, okay, we optimized the attendance rate by 10% and we've doubled the conversion rate of the webinar, right? So we put a lot of work into the nurturing, into the touch point building, all those things so people attend the webinar. And then when people do attend the webinar, the conversion rate of the webinar itself has doubled. And look at this, guys. We have a higher CPA of somebody signing up to the webinar, but through increasing the attendance rate by 10% and doubling the conversion rate of that 30%, we've halved our CPA, okay? And like I said, the target CPA was around 350 because as somebody signs up, they're paying $500. So it's a good start. But, this is the illustrative point that I want to show you guys through data, okay? That it doesn't really matter about what you're paying to get somebody to sign up. If your attendance rate was really high, it was at 60 or 70%, that is quite difficult to increase to 80 or 90%, okay? But if you have an attendance rate of 20%, that's easier to fix. Trying to half the CPA or trying to fix an attendance rate of 80% to 90%, for example, that is hard. So know where to put your resources, I'd say. Don't try and get, okay, we need to try and get half a CPA in our ads. No. Focus on how do we get more people to attend? Out of those people that have signed up, how do we get more people to attend? And out of those people that do attend, how do we convert them to signing up on the webinar? How can we focus on that? So using this data, guys, is what I just wanted to illustrate to you. That doesn't matter about the CPA because ultimately here, the thing that was lacking, the weak point of the funnel was attendance rates and then the conversion rate of the webinar. So optimizing for that, spending time and resources on that, halved our CPA. We increased the attendance rate by 10%. 10% super easy. It can be harder if you obviously have a higher attendance rate, but from 20 to 30% is pretty easy. From 20 to 40% is also quite easy. From 20 to 50 or 60% is a bit harder, etc. Right? But these are smaller things that will actually move the needle. So don't necessarily focus on the cost of somebody signing up to the webinar. Really put a lot of work in the nurturing, the conversion rate of the webinars themselves, because that's where you can nearly half your overall true CPA, right? Before, with poor attendance rates and a poor conversion rate, we're getting really high CPA. When we optimize that, we're getting half of that CPA. And that is even take into account that we're paying more for somebody to sign up to the webinar in the first place. So that's my last tip, guys, is to ensure that you're looking at conversion rate numbers, attendance numbers, and your CPA numbers to paint that full story. And don't just look at your CPA numbers and think, hey, we just need to optimize around the price of somebody signing up to a webinar. No, optimize around attendance rates and optimize around the conversion rate of your webinar. That is going to be the thing that moves the needle here, okay? And guys, like I mentioned to you, point number 13 is actually a secret one, is the other video that I'm going to, again, link in the top left-hand corner. If you want to know how to get 95% attendance rates, okay, we have a system for this. Flawless system, right? We've tried it across many different clients, across many different industries. I highly recommend you trying and testing this out for yourself. If you are running webinar ads, guys, look at the top tips that I'm suggesting here. Look at the tips that I'm giving in the other video on how to get really good attendance rates and merge those together to get perfect webinar strategy for you guys, okay? So that you're utilizing these learnings and it gives you a leg up when you go and run your webinars, maybe for the first time, or you're optimizing your webinar funnels and a strategy, maybe utilizing some of these tactics and tips that worked really well for us in your ads as well. In the comment down below if you got any questions. Guys, if you are interested in what the Ad Wizard team is doing and you want to be the first to get exclusive updates to what the Ad Wizard team have coming up next, join the waitlist today, completely free. Exclusive access to the things the Ad Wizard team are working on first. If you want to register your interest, hit the link down below and join the waitlist today. Completely free, guys. No fluff, no marketing, none of that stuff. just useful information for you guys. If you are interested in what the AdWizard team is doing, join the waitlist today and be first to get exclusive access to what we have coming up next. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully now you have some learnings as to what made our campaign work and the learnings in between. So guys, I appreciate every single one of you. Hit me a comment down below if you found it interesting. I'm your boy Jerry the AdWizard. You can catch me on X and Instagram at Jerry AdWizard, on LinkedIn at Jerry Griffiths, and at Jerry Dreadlocks everywhere. If you're wanting to learn the perfect formula that allowed us to get 95% attendance rates for our webinars, different to the strategy that we've gone through today, these are master best practice tips to ensure a high attendance rate and high engagement for your webinars. Click this video over here. I've got a step-by-step walkthrough where I talk through all of our tips over here. I'm your boy Jerry the AdWizard, and wherever you are in the world, I bid you peace and love and a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, I'll catch you in the next one.